working on an answer, find, and shade worksheet that's called a 2-in-1. And we'll talk about that in a second. And this worksheet covers percent of a number. And if you've forgotten, a percent of a number is asking you what piece or what part or how much of a number you have. So for instance, if I said you had 50% of 4, well, 50% is half, so you have half of 4, which would be 2, and that is the percent you have. So that's what you're trying to do when you're calculating percent of a number. Before we begin, let's take a look at the directions and better understand what a 2-in-1 answer, find, and shade worksheet is about. It says, first off, answer all the problems. So you have to answer all the problems. It says choose odd or even. Odd would be things like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. Those are all odd numbers. And even would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and those are all even. So the directions say you choose odd or even. If you choose odd, it says only shade in the odd 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 numbered problems. So if you chose odd, when you answer number 1, number 3, and number 5, you would only shade in those answers. So you would not shade in problem 2 and problem 4 because those are the even ones. So you're only shading in the odd problems, but you still need to answer all the questions. The even only shade in even 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So if you did the even ones, you wouldn't shade in 1, but you would shade in 2. You wouldn't shade in 3, but you would shade in 4. And what I mean shade is once you find the answer, you'll find it over here in the picture and shade it in. So if you do odd, you get one picture. If you do even, you get another picture. Hey, that's pretty cool. 2 pictures in here? Wonder how they did that. Alrighty, let's get started on these questions. Problem number 1. It says 42.5% of 80. And I'm going to write this over here on this other piece of paper. 42.5% of 80. Now, there's a few ways of answering this question, so let's cover a couple of them right now. First off, what is a percent telling us? Well, a percent is a number out of 100. So if you have 42.5%, you're saying you have 42.5 out of 100. And that's how you can write it as a fraction. But also, if you think about it, if you divide 42.5 by 100, all you're doing is moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So this also equals 0.425. And this is another way of writing it. So you really have 2 ways of writing a percent. And I'll cover both of them on this problem. But after that, I'm only going to do it as a decimal because I think it's a lot easier. So let's do it as a fraction first. So you have 42.5%. And I just told you a percent is out of 100. So I'll write it like a fraction like this. Now you see this of right here? Of means multiplication. So I'm going to put a times 80. And you can change that 80 to a fraction by writing 42.5 over 100 times 80 over 1. Because 80 over 1 equals 80. It means the same thing. Now, you got a couple options. You can cross cancel. You can just multiply straight across. I think I will cross cancel a little bit. And I will divide this 100 by 10 and this 80 by 10. And that'll give me 8. And that'll give me 10. And then I can also divide this 8 by 2, which makes 4. And divide this 10 by 2, which gives me 5. 4, 42.5, and 5. So I end up with 42.5 times 4 over 5. By the way, if you didn't know what I did right here, I cross-canceled. If you don't understand that, you might want to ask your teacher or look it up. I'm sorry I can't get too much into that. because we're trying just to do a percent of a number today. I just want to show you a couple ways how you can solve this. Now we need to multiply 42.5 times 4. 4 times 5 is 0, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10, and 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 is 17. Well, I have a decimal right here with one number or one place value to the right, so when I'm done, I need 1 right there. So the answer I get is 170. Then I'm going to take 170, which is what this equals right here. So I'm going to have 170 over 5, and I'm going to divide 170 divided by 5. 5 goes into 17 3 times. We get 15, subtract, we get 20, and 5 goes into 24 times, so the answer is 34. You can actually write this just to show it is done. So all that work we just did, and we're going to get an answer of 34. Again, if you're confused about these fractions, you don't know how to cross cancel, etc., 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 let me write this right here, equals 34. If you're confused about fractions, you don't know how to cross cancel, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you another way of doing it. And here's a second way of doing it. We had 42.5% of 80. Same problem up here. And since we said this was out of 100, why don't we just divide this right away by 100, and we move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. So 42.5 becomes 0.425. The percent's gone. The of turns into times 80. So it just turns into a basic multiplication problem. I can rewrite this so this looks like 80 times 0.425. If you look closely, I have 1, 2, 3 numbers to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to write a 3 right here to remind me. When I'm done, I'll need 3 numbers to the right of the decimal. I'm going to multiply 0 times everything is 0, 0, 0, 0. And then I add a placeholder right here. 8 times 5 is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20, carry the 2. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 2 is 34. So we get 0, 0, 0, 34. And we had a 3 right here. That tells us we need 3 numbers to the right of the decimal. 1, 2, 3. So the answer is 34. Do you see how we got the same answer there and there? The exact same answer. Personally, I like step 2 the best. I think it's simple. Doing fractions becomes difficult. Just change this number right here to a decimal and multiply. And again, when you change it to a decimal, you always move it 2 places or 2 spaces to the left. Always, 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 it doesn't matter. Always 2 spaces to the left. And if you really want to know, if you change a decimal to a percent, you're going to move 2 spaces to the right. You're going to go the other way. But it's always, always, always 2 spaces. So we have 2 ways of solving this. But there's some shortcuts you can take here to save you some time. And it makes your life easier. And I'll show you some of these as we're going along. If you get confused when I'm taking a shortcut, just remember you can solve any percent of a number problem by using step 1 or step 2. And if you're confused, don't worry. We're going to start doing the problems and I'll help you out. So we know the answer for problem number 1 is 34. I'm going to write 34 right here. If you chose that you want to do the odd, remember you're going to choose odd or even. If you chose odd, you would shade in any 34s you can find in this picture. If you didn't do odd, you're doing even, you don't shade this one in. Problem number 2, it says 24% of 50. So let's go over here. And it said 24% of 50. I am going to do it step 2 way by changing it into a decimal. 24%, we moved the decimal 2 spaces to the left. By the way, I always have a saying, if the decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. Since we didn't see it, we know it's here on the right. So I moved 2 spaces to the left. So this becomes 0.24. The of becomes multiplication, and you have 50. Now we just multiply 50 times 0.24. We have two spaces, 1, 2, to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to write a little 2 right here to remind me when I'm finished, I better have two numbers or two digits to the right of the decimal. So we're going to multiply. This 0, do I really care about this 0? Do I have to multiply every single time? No. When I'm finished, I'm just going to put this 0 back. So really, I'm going to erase this right here, and I'm just going to put 5. And I know when I'm done, I'm going to have to put a 0 back in. Well, 5 times 4 is 20. I carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, and I put this 0 back in. And then I have to move, or I have to have two places or two spaces past the decimal. So I go 1, 2, so I get an answer of 12. So 24% of 50 is 12. I like to show you a quick shortcut.
And don't tell anybody about this.
Here is a quick shortcut. You see this percent right here? Since this is a multiplication, because of is multiplication, I can assign this percent to this number over here. And I can rewrite the problem like this. What is 50% of 24? And what is 50% of 24? 12. And I did that in my head because 50% is half. So you're asking what is half of 24? Remember, a percent is out of 100. And 50 out of 100 is 1/2. And this always works. If you didn't understand what I did, don't worry. Just solve it this way. So 24% of 50 is 12. I'm going to write 12 right here. 12. And if you pick the even ones, you would find all the 12s in this picture and you would shade them in. Let me do one more before I set you free. Problem 3 says, what is 80% of 65? Well, first off, I'm going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left to make 0.80. I'm going to change of to multiplication, and I have 65. So you're asking yourself, what is 0.8 times 65? I'm going to rewrite this 0.80 times 65. I have 2 spaces to the right of the decimal, so when I'm done, I need 2 numbers or 2 digits or 2 spaces to the right of the decimal. I can multiply. 0 times everything is 0. Then I'm doing the 8, so I add a placeholder right here. Let me change the color. I have a placeholder right here. 8 times 5 is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 4 is 52. I don't care about this 0 right there. I'm going to add this up, and I get 0, 0, 52. And I need to put 2 spaces in the decimal, so the answer is 52. 80% of 65 is 52. By the way, there's other ways of doing this, and I'd like to show you something really quick. And again, if you get confused, don't worry about it. Just ignore me and do it this way, because this way always works. But you see this 80%? What I could do is do 10% of 65, which you should know is 6.5, because when you do 10%, all you do is move the decimal 1 space to the left. And then since you have 6.5, you just ask yourself, well, how much do I multiply the 10% to get to 80%? Well, you times it by 8, which means you would times this 6.5 by 8. So you get 8 times 6.5. You have 1 space for the decimal. 8 times 5 is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 4 is 52. And I put the 1 space back in, and I get 52. This is another way, or another shortcut way, of solving the problem. So we come back over here, and I put the answer is 52. All right, this is what I like you to do. I like you to try problem 4, 5, and 6 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me. Welcome back. You were supposed to do problems 4, 5, and 6. Problem number 4. It's an even. And the problem says 25% of 124. 25% of 124. Well, you know the of is multiplication. You have 124. The decimal is not in sight. It's on the right, so it's right here. And to change it to a decimal, always, always, always 2 spaces to the left. So this becomes 0.25. You can add a 0 here if you like. That's up to you. And so this turns into a multiplication problem. We do 0.25 times 124. And I get an answer of 31. And again, that is perfectly fine to solve it this way. But here is a shortcut. You know 25% is out of 100. Well, if you think about money, how many quarters go into a dollar? 4. So if you have 25 over 100, you have 1 quarter, or a fourth. So all you had to do with this 124 is divide it by 4. And 4 goes into 12 3 times. That gives you 12. 0. Bring down the 4. You get 1. You get 4. You subtract. You get 0. You got the same answer as over here. If you don't understand what I did, you can do it this way. It works perfect all the time. The answer is 31. And I put it in red because all the evens were put in red. Number 5. Without even leaving the worksheet now, you should be able to tell me for problem number 5, 50% of 400, and 50% is half, because 50 over 100 is half. So 50% of 400 is 200. You're just taking half of this 400, which is 200. And you're done. No work. Easy smeezy. Problem number 6 is 30% of 250. So I have 30% of 250. The decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. So to change it to a decimal, I'm just going to move it 2 spaces to the left. So this becomes 0.30. The of turns into multiplication, and we have 250. There's a few ways of doing this. We'll do it the long way this time. So we're going to multiply 0.30 times 250. We get 75 as our answer. So 30% of 250 is 75. Check it out. Here's a shortcut. We could use the idea of 10% of 250 first. And you know 10% of 250 is 25 because I told you all you do is move the decimal 1 space over when you find 10% of a number. So that becomes 25. Well, what do I need to multiply the 10% to get 30%? Well, times 3. So all we do is times this number by 3, and we get 3 times 5 is 15, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 75. The same exact answer. Honestly, I think this way is shorter, but again, this way works all the time. 75. All right, I think I've given you a lot of help so far. So I want you to do problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on your own. By the way, this is a level 1 worksheet. If you find this really easy, maybe you should be moving up to the level 2 or the level 3 worksheet, or maybe you just want to work on it on your own so you don't have to listen to me. But if you're struggling and you need some help, I'm here for you. So I want you to do problems 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on your own. When you're finished with them, come back to me and we will check your answers. I will see you in a bit. Problem 7. It says 10% of 450. 10% of 450. Well, we've already talked about this. If you're doing 10% of a number, all you do is take the decimal that's not in sight, so it's on the right, and you just move it one place value or one space to the left. So 10% of 450 would be 45. Problem 8. Problem 8 says 60% of 205. So we have 60% of 205. Well, we need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left to change the percent to a decimal. So this becomes 0.60. Of turns into multiplication and 205. So all we do is multiply. So the answer is 123 equals 123. For problem number 8, the answer is 123. Problem 9 says 150% of 40. 150% of 40. For an answer. And of course this is going to be bigger than this because you're doing 150%. Remember, a percent is out of 100. So you actually have 150 out of 100, which tells us that the percent is going to be bigger than this number. So the answer is going to be greater than 40. By the way, if you want to see a quick trick for this, you know how this was 150%? Well, you know 100% of 40 equals 40. Then you have 50% of 40, and you know that's half, so that's 20. This makes 150% of 40 equals 60. Pretty simple, huh? I love these shortcuts. So you really didn't have to do all this multiplication. You could have just done it this way. Answer for problem 9 is 60. Problem 10 says 12.5% of 208. You know what? For problem 10 and 11, I'm just going to show you the work, play a little bit of music so I don't have to talk so much. You got those two. Problem 12 says 16% of 500. 16% of 500. The decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. We move it 2 over to make it into a decimal. So it's right there. So it's 0.16. Of is times 500. And all we do is rewrite it 0.16 times 500. We move the decimal 2 spaces over to get rid of it, or we just remember when we're done, we'll need 2 digits to the right of the decimal. Let's multiply. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30. Add a placeholder because we're starting in the tens place. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 0 is 0. And 1 times 5 is 5. We add this up and we get 0008. We need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, or make sure we have 2 digits to the right of the decimal, so the answer will be 80. This is 80. Problem number 12, the answer is 80. So this is what I like you to do. I like you to do problems 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. Problem 13 says 40% of 307.5. You have 40% of 307.5. We are going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left to make this into a decimal. So it's going to become 0.40 of 307.5. But remember, of means multiplication, so let's change this to times. Then we're just going to multiply 0.40 times 307.5. We have one number to the right of the decimal here, so we need to put a 1. And we have 2 here, so we have a 2. This gives us 3. So we're done. We need 3 digits to the right of the decimal, or we need to move the decimal 3 times. Let's multiply this. 0 times all this is 0. Again, you don't have to write all this. You can just put the 0 in at the end. And then we do 4 times 5. Oh, before we do 4 times 5, we need to add a placeholder because we're starting in the tens place. 4 times 5 is 20, carry 2. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30, so we put a 0 and carry the 3. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3, and 4 times 3 is 12. And when we're done, we need to go 1, 2, 3, because there's 3 digits to the right of the decimal up here. 1, 2, 3. So we put the decimal right there, and we get 123. 40% of 307.5 is 123. The answer is 123. Problem 14 says, what is 1% of 300? 1% of 300. Well, honestly, you could do this in your head because you already know if you're doing 10% of 300, we just move the decimal 1 space and we'd get 30. Well, what do you think you do for 1%? You would move the decimal 2 spaces, so you would get 3. The answer is 3. Again, I'm starting to lose my voice, too much talking, too many problems. So I think for problems 15, 16, and 17, I'm just going to show you the work while I play some music. So you just watch, and hopefully you get it. And if I go too fast, you can always press pause and study it a little bit. But I think problems 15, 16, and 17, I will just show you the work really quick. Here we go. Problem 18 is 20% of 55. So we say 20% of 55. If the decimal is not in sight, it's on the right. We move it 2 spaces to the left. Always 2 spaces to the left to change a percent to a decimal. So we get 0.20 of is times 55. So we're going to multiply 0.20 or 0.20 times 55. 0 times everything is 0. We add a placeholder and we do 2 times 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is 11. We add this together. We get 0, 0, 1, 1. We needed to move the decimal, so we have 2 spaces or 2 digits to the right of the decimal. 1, 2. The answer is 11. The answer to number 18 is 11. What I'd like you to do is problems 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. Welcome back. You were supposed to do problems 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 on your own. By the way, remember when you're shading in, if you picked odds, you're only shading in the odd problems. If you did even, you're going to be shading in the even problems. Let's take a look at problem number 19. 175% of 4. 175% of 4. Well, if the decimal is not in sight, it's on the right, and we always move it 2 spaces to the left to make it into a decimal. So this would be 1.75 of is times 4. So all I'm going to do is write 4 times 1.75 over here. Answer is 7. For number 19, the answer will be 7. Problem number 20, we have 5% of 160. So I'm going to write 5% of 160. If you don't see the decimal, it's on the right. If it's not in sight, it's on the right. So we move it 2 spaces to the right. And we put a 0 in the empty space. You can't be sitting there looking at me going, there's only one number. I'm only going to move it 1 space. No, it's always 2 spaces. Always. So we get 0.05 of is times, and you get 160. We are going to multiply over here 0.05 times 160. The answer is 8. So I put an 8 right here. And if you were doing the evens, you would shade that one in. Problem 21. You have 80% of 18.75. 80% of 18.75. Alrighty, let's get this done. We need to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. So we get 0.80 of is times 18.75. I come over here and I'm going to multiply this out. So I have 0.80 times 18.75. You know, when you're multiplying, you don't have to line up the decimals because we're supposedly just getting rid of them, moving them out of the way. Here I have 1, 2. Put a 2 here, and here I have 1, 2. I put a 2 here. This gives me a total of 4. So when I'm finished, I'll need to move the decimal 4 spaces to the left, or I'll need 4 digits to the right of the decimal, whichever way works for you. I am going to multiply. Let me change that color. Well, 0 times everything is 0. Then we are starting over at the tens place, the 8, so we need to add a placeholder right here. 8 times 5 is 40. Add a 0, carry the 4. 8 times 7 is 56 plus 4 makes 60. Carry the 6. 8 times 8 is 64 plus 6 is 70, carry the 7. And 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15. And when I'm done, I need to move the decimal, or 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers are to the right of the decimal. So the final answer is 15, because you would have 15.0000, and you do not have to write that, so you're left with 15. The answer for problem number 21 is 15. On problem 22, 23, and 24, just watch how I solve it, because
I won't be able to talk soon.
watch me do the problems, listen to some tunes, and I will see you in a bit. All right, we're almost finished. So what I'd like you to do is problems 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me and we will check your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Problem 25. It says 25% of 26. 25% of 26. Well, you know 25% is 25 over 100, which means it's a quarter, which means you're just going to divide 26 by 4. And 4 does not go into 2, but 4 goes into 26 6 times. You get 24. If you subtract, you get 2. Well, hopefully you know you can add a decimal right here and bring it straight up. Let me extend this line. And then you can start adding zeros. I think we only need 1 0, and you just bring it down, and you get 20. And 4 goes into 25 times. This will equal 6.5. The answer for number 25 is 6.5. Next one, you have 2% of 200. For problem 26, 2% of 200. Well, check out this percent. Why don't we just send it over here and say we have 200% of 2. You know that 100% of 2 equals 2, and another 100% of 2 equals 2. And 100% plus 100% is the 200% we need. Of 2 must equal 4. 2% of 200 is actually 4. The answer for number 26 is 4. Problem 27. You have 125% of 4. 125% of 4. You could do this a few ways. A quick way is you could just find 100% of 4 would equal 4, and then you just do 25% of 4. 25% is 25 over 100, which is 1/4. So all you do is divide 4 by 4, and you would get 1. So 25% of 4 is 1. 125%, because I just added these two together right here, of 4 equals 5. I just added these two. The answer is 5. So this answer is 5. Problem number 28, 80% of 75. 80% of 75. Decimal's not in sight, it must be on the right, so then I move it 2 spaces to the left, which I always do to change a percent to a decimal. I get 0.80 of 75. I'm just going to rewrite this right here, times 75. I'm going to get rid of this decimal, and I'm going to put a 2, so I know when I'm done, I need to put it back. And we get an answer of 60. So 80% of 75 is 60. We're going to put 60 right here. Let me scoot this down a little bit. Number 29, 22% of 25. 22% of 25. I could just take this and send this over here and make this 25%. 25% is 25 over 100, which is 1/4. So all you're going to do is divide 22 by 4. 4 goes into 22 5 times. That gives me 20. I subtract and I get 2. I can add a decimal right here and bring it straight up. I can extend this line. And this allows us to add a 0, which I can just bring straight down. And now we have 20. And 4 goes into 25 times. We get an answer of 5.5. So 22% of 25 is 5.5. Last problem, 5% of 500. 5% of 500. Can move the decimal 2 spaces to the left, so we get 0.05. Of is multiplication, 500. So we just rewrite this really quick. 0.05 times 500. I can move the decimal 2 spaces out. Just make sure you put it back in when you're finished so you don't even worry about it. So 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. When you're done, you say, wait, I have to put in the decimal 2 spaces to the left, or I have 2 digits to the right of the decimal. So it looks the same thing as that. The answer would be 25. So 5% of 500 is 25. And right here, I put 25. And guess what? We are finished. Make sure you shade in all the numbers. Remember, if you're doing odd, you only shade in the odd. If you're doing even, you only do the even problems. Hopefully it's a cool picture. You can check with your friend if he did odd or she did even, and you can see what the pictures look like. Well, I hope I helped, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.